Hello, hello.
Oh, welcome.
Emily, hey, how's it going? Welcome, you guys. Gonna take a minute.
Here.
How you been today, Janelle?
It's been a day.
It has been a day. It's been a wild day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna drop. Hey, Adam, how's it going? I forgot, Adam. I was gonna see if he wanted to jump on with us. But I
Yes.
didn't check back to see if he had time.
Definitely.
And of course, I accidentally logged myself out of my Twitter, and I can't get back in. Doing really well today. I think it's still logged in on my computer. But yeah, I think it's been a day for all of us for sure.
Logan.
Oh, it's Logan. Mr. One, Brantley has not been kidnapped. Brantley has had to take a hiatus while he navigates a situation pertaining to employment. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that. Sorry, Brantley.
Yeah. But he's good. He's fine.
Yep. He is good. He's actually, we have tech support that has red hair and a beard right now. So could be with us in spirit if he wanted to be.
Yeah.
I'm bad at this. Okay. So anyway, I really love the trigger warning. All right. So we've got a couple people here, so I will jump into our spiel. But welcome to Open Spaces. This is a little semi-weekly gathering that we put together at the very beginning of some of the early allegations coming out about IHOP KC, because we wanted a place where all of us could kind of like gather and process our experiences together, but in a format where we could kind of like see each other's faces and hear each other's voices, because it got lonely. It got isolating and crazy. And as part of that, if you've not been here before, we usually start with a little bit of discussion, and then we open it up for anyone to jump in and drop the link in the chat. And so if you, which I forgot to do for Adam, and maybe tech support could send Adam a link on Twitter, because he was going to jump on at the beginning with us. Anyway, so you're going to hear diverse perspectives. People in this group are Christians, conservatives, agnostics, atheists, raging communist Marxist liberals. We are and there's space for all of you. You get to come and be who you are, exactly who you are, and exactly as you are, and feel the things you're feeling. And the goal is not to debate, and it's not even to vent, but it's for all of us to sit together and listen with an empathetic ear and try to learn a little bit from each other, understand each other a little bit more, and hopefully kind of glean something that we can take with us on our own journeys, because we're all at different places. But we're some of the only people who understand what we've been through. And I think it applies to a lot of spaces that were like IHOP, like Bethel.
Yeah.
So, or Morningstar, or any of those. On that note, how's everyone doing this week? Throw in the chat, is there anything anyone is dying to discuss? We're gonna discuss Ellen Hood's statement, but I'm wondering if there's any other topics you guys have on the brain. I think there's a slight delay. No one has anything to say. I'll wait on that, but super chill week, even globally. Yes, quite chill globally. I too have just felt no stress whatsoever. Michael Brown, for sure. Yeah. There was a little more. We can pull that up so we can talk about it. I just have feelings like that one girl in Mean Girls.
I'm talking about those too.
Yeah, how's it been for you? How's it been for you? Yep, you.
Oh man, so it's definitely. I was talking to both my therapist and my professor, because I'm taking a class on poverty, and it's interesting because she found out that I'm a cult survivor, and I had a conversation with her just about some of the things that we've been doing, and she's just been super impressed with the work, and it's been an interesting connection, and so I was just kind of venting to her this morning, like, this has been a really tough week.
Yeah.
Just in terms of physical reactions to some of the political happenings going on, and definitely today with Zelensky and Trump and that whole fallout.
Hard to watch.
Oh, that was for me, my whole chest just went tight. Just watching that play out and hearing the words that were used, and it was very triggering for me because it felt very similar to the stuff that we've seen, like, and just dealing with leadership at IHOP and their responses and reactions to things. And it was really hard for me to see that again and playing it out, watching it play out on a much bigger scale. And it just created a lot of anxiety. Sorry, my dog has a lot of opinions too.
How about you, Adam? How's your?
Oh, hey, I wasn't sure if I was on.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Good to see you. Hey, Janelle. Yeah, it's been. I'm an accountant, so I feel like a zombie right now because it's tax season. So, I got all that going on, but of course, yeah, there's been a lot just on the Bethel front here the past month or so. It's been pretty wild, actually. So Melissa and I have been honestly kind of reeling from some stuff I can't talk about, but related to Bethel. But yeah, that's been a kind of a rough one there. But I think we're kind of coming hopefully on that other side of that now. I'm looking at her to make sure I'm not saying anything I shouldn't.
I love it.
Yeah.
No,
I think
get
it's
it.
probably enough of that, but then yeah, for sure the Michael Brown stuff has been pretty jolting. Really, really appreciated what Joel, the audio that Joel posted.
Oh, you know what? I did not listen to it. I saw that happened, and there was so much going on that I missed it. So maybe we pull that up later. I think this is a president comment. There's so many situations coming to light. I have to decide how invested I get overall. I don't like having to choose what to care about, but there's so much. And I think it all feels like it stacks too.
Yeah.
And that it felt like, and it feels like, hey, Victoria, it feels like it stacks, and it feels like, for me, it started to feel like the situations that we're fighting, right? And like trying to see justice for, it's like they've bled out into politics because these same guys, you got Malachi O'Brien up on the Faith office, and it's all the same abuse dynamics. And that feels like, it just feels like it's taking over the world. Whereas before there was a certain point before where it felt like I could separate the two. I don't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot. It's, in some ways it feels like it comes in waves, right? And it's not just, I don't know about y'all, but it's not just the waves of the external events, right? And like the layers that come out and the stuff that becomes public, but it's also the waves, that you go through as a survivor, but then also like trying to advocate for people.
Yeah.
Like the waves of your own grief. And, I realized, like, not to be too vulnerable, but I think yesterday I just realized, man, a whole nother level of lonely through, even though the connection has been amazing. Like, I'm so thankful for that. But like, you just think back about what you had before all this stuff happened. And for us, it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was kind of just sitting dormant, right? We're just kind of used to it, just like, trudging along in life, doing our thing. And then the Band-Aid gets ripped off a year and a half ago. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is like the waves of all the things,
Yeah,
Um,
it's like waves of fresh layers of grief where
Yeah.
like for me, yeah, reconnecting with people on a more uh like a deeper emotional level and talking about some of these things
mhm.
because through all this, you know, I've regained a circle of friends who are able to handle, you know, kind of the messy and the deep parts of life that I had not been able to find in a lot of years. It just felt like people weren't wired for it. They weren't because that's one thing that I feel like, you know, in church I did people were expecting to talk about the hard parts of life. Um, you know, maybe less so at IHOP. I mean, I think I had friends who did, but it, you know, you didn't have time for it. But you know, with church itself, like there were people willing to go there, and you know, it's just the ways that we dealt with it were kind of bypassy. But you still got emotional support. Um, like even with prayer was really a form of emotional support because you pour your heart out to someone and they respond with empathy, and then they're basically speaking affirmations over you regardless of what you think about prayer right now,
Yeah.
you know, and that there was an emotional connection in that, and the feeling of being comforted and cared for and that kind of thing. So anyway, you know, it just I reconnecting with people who are wired that way and are able to connect on that level has almost made me feel more isolated because they're all far away. Like I can't just like have their kids over and like I can't do
Yeah,
like the regular parts of life with
ditto.
them.
Yeah,
And I can't find anyone left to who wants to do that because I feel like everyone's so underwater right now.
yeah,
Not even just church drama stuff. I mean, just mean in general. You know, and so that has been hard because this is a great one. Sometimes I feel I can barely relate with normal people anymore. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do feel like that. I just can't. And I think that's something that a lot of people really describe. I was reading Dr. Steve Hassan, and um, I guess it's a thing that a lot of people describe when they leave a cult.
Absolutely. I think that experience of close proximity and also how often we were interacting with each other throughout the week, you know, in these third spaces, whether it was like the prayer room or a prayer group, a Bible
Yep.
study. You know, you had these accountability partners and mentors, and you know the list goes on. And you know, IHOP had multiple services on the weekends, and so like having that really high level of community interaction and then suddenly stepping out of that, even compared to a lot of like church communities, like your average church community that, you know, meets maybe twice a week, um, there's a huge drop off. And it's really difficult to adjust to. And even like, you know, I've had some experience with, you know, it's a similar experience with the military community where like
Hmm.
you really bond over this common experience,
mm,
and that no one
Yep.
on the outside gets, right?
Yep.
And you have these really closed in communities. Everybody's living close together, and you know you're in close proximity, so you could just jump over to your neighbor's house real quick, and it's a very unique sense of community.
Yeah.
And after we left that, I went into a deep depression because I felt incredibly lonely, um, because I was like, we can't replicate that again. We can't recreate that feeling of closeness that we experienced, you know, whether it was in the military or in places like IHOP or Bethel, where it was really high interactions.
yeah.
Um, Yeah.
This wasn't even a topic for tonight, but I remember a couple years after IHOP, we were looking for a church and we couldn't find one, and we did eventually find one, and unfortunately, it fell apart because of, ironically, prophecy. Anik, love you, friend. And it. So I looked up just the research on like what does it take to actually make close friendships. Hey, Nicole, and so I'm looking at the research. I'm looking at and it was really interesting. It was like you need to, you have to be in a similar like economic bracket. You need to, because then you have similar opportunities. You need to organically bump into each other, whether that's at the grocery store or whether that's whatever. And then there has to be something for your friendship to center around. And these were like the main things, right? And so there has to be like a reason for you to be jumping in and connecting with each other. Which church, and then it was talking about like the number of hours that it takes for you to log to actually become certain levels of bonded and like the time frame that has to happen in.
Yes.
And it was actually a really tight time frame. It was like, I'm going to make this up, but it was like, 50 hours in a 1 month period or something like that.
That's interesting stuff.
It was a huge number. And so when I looked at, and it stuck out to me, and so it makes sense to me that I made some really close friends in the initial time period of all of this, because there were people who I was in contact. Here we go. It's at least 200 hours with them. And the 200 hours has to be within a certain time frame. It can't be like 200 hours spread over a year or something like that. I can't remember what the time frame is, but when I broke it down, it was like, so much, and I was like, frick.
Yeah. And so take that, let's say it's 200. This stuff's fascinating to me, Susan. I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yeah.
You take the 200 hours, right? And this is my accountant brain coming out. What does that equate to for a full-time job? Like if you're to compare that, that time. So a full-time job is 40 hours a week, figure 4 weeks a month, even though it's, a little more. So that's actually more. And I don't know if it's within a month time or, what the actual compression is, right? Like if it's a month or two or what, but like, let's just say it's a month for sake of argument. Like that's more time than you actually go to your job in a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty tall statistic. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, let's see, 60 hours for a casual friendship, 80 to 100 to transition to being a friend, and then more than 200 hours together to become good friends. And that doesn't have the actual time compression because it's
just a cumulative, like that's how much time they're saying that's how much time it takes to get to that level in a friendship.
Let's see. I'm seeing if I can find it. Because it's not. It's frustrating because everything is citing it. There it is. It looks like it was over 9 weeks.
Oh yeah, that's easy to do.
Or something like that. That's what they did. So they had time spent engaging in leisure activities also protected closeness. So it was, I don't know how long the first study was over, but it was over. I don't know what the first one, how it looks like. It kind of looks like it happened. Okay. Longitudinal studies of friendships development concur that friendship development happens swiftly, usually within 3 to 9 weeks after meeting. 3 to 4 months may be required for close friendships to develop. There you go. 4 months after meeting potential friends, few new friendships develop, either because individuals have elected not to pursue closer relationship or do not have sufficient time to dedicate to new friends. There you go.
That's pretty quick, though. Like, what did it say? 3 to
3
What
to
was it?
4 months
Okay.
was what was typical for close friendships to develop. So that 200-hour span is happening in 3 to 4 months. And how many work weeks did you say it was?
Well, so just like full-time job, that's about plus or minus 160 hours a month. So
Yeah.
Oh, that's right
I
here. Yeah.
guess,
After 160 hours of contact, men who were confined together had developed patterns of self-disclosure approximating best friendship.
men had the what? What was that?
So after 160, this is fascinating. So they locked men in a room, essentially.
Wow.
After
Which is
160 hours
kinda
of
scary.
contact, men who were confined together had developed patterns of self-disclosure approximating best friendship. I love the way that they say that. They're not
sounds
calling
so
the best friend,
scientific.
but it approximates best friendship.
As close as you can
I'm
get.
gonna say that to the. I'm gonna say that to someone this week. Hey, I've noticed we've developed patterns
We've
of
approximated
self-disclosure
some
that are
friendship.
approximating best friendship.
Yeah, it sounds so scientific. Like, and to be fair, like, we men, well, I'll just say this, like, y'all women, like, y'all can meet total strangers, and inside of a couple minutes you're sharing maybe not life secrets, but you're exhibiting some vulnerability, which I love that. I love
Yeah,
how y'all
yeah.
do that as women. We as men struggle by and large to do that. Like, so it's I think it's funny that they put it like that, like they're approximating some
It
friendship.
approximated best friendship.
Approximating some self-disclosure, aka transparency.
Yeah.
So great. Yeah, I think that really is what makes it hard because how do you have that sort of time, because then you also have to come up with what you're going to even do and why you're reaching out, how you're going to connect, and that's a lot of exhaustion. I mean, I have kids with chronic illness. I have 4 kids with chronic illness.
Mm.
It becomes a lot quick.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine.
Yeah, just figuring out, and then it's like, it's just a lot. Whereas when you had something to center around,
Yeah.
where you're going to see them no matter what, then you have a reason to start chatting, to start connecting.
Yeah.
And we just don't do that anymore as like a society even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole's got a great 50 hours a week times 4 equals 200 in a month that I have. But we weren't allowed to talk for half those
I know, that was funny.
hours.
Yeah.
That's why we never became friends. I mean, I had my roommates were my friends, but you would go and just feel like you never knew anybody. And I think it's hard too, because I remember trying to go back to church and it was huge and annoying, and everyone had their friend circles. And
Yeah, you figure out how cliquey. Everybody talked about how cliquey church is, and I mean,
Mhm.
I think how many times have we been back to church in 7 years or 15 years? 3. She's been more than me, but I just can't, like, and sorry,
we've killed Adam. We've killed him.
hold on. Sorry about that. My voice is cracking. But anyway, yeah, I think I've been to church 3 times, maybe 5. But you feel the clicks, you feel all the
Yeah.
weirdness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it took a lot for us to break into friendship groups in the church we were in. And when it fell apart, we tried a couple more, and it's that place where you're like, okay, but you know enough to see the patterns of unhealth,
Yeah.
and you see them and you're like, I can't invest here, because this is going to end badly. And then sure enough, a couple of years later, you find out it did. And that's really hard. And I don't remember it being quite as much like that. I'm not sure why, but maybe this is how it always was. I don't know.
You think that too, like you go back and you look back, hindsight, and many of us were roughly the same age bracket, right? Early 20s or late teens, and largely not married, don't have kids, and so that's your single focus, and you're doing it all together. Somebody made that military comparison. I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah,
It's like you talk about the mission over people. That's been such a hot topic lately. I forgot who was talking about that. Was it today or yesterday? But like you're gathering around this mission, and that feels really good. Like when you're connecting with people, you're young, you're like, we're doing this thing together. It feels like you're close. And then, 10, 15 years later, whatever, you're like, we're all finding out this mission was a big farce, and it was just ever what you want to call it, house of cards, whatever, built on, the prophetic history, blah, blah, blah. But you're like, but damn, that was like, there was some serious connection though. And that's part of like what I'm trying to figure out in my deconstruction / very early stages of reconstruction. Very early stages. I don't even claim to have done any reconstruction. I'm still very deep in deconstruction. But I think that stuff like this, like what we're doing here, on Twitter and all the different spots, is like, it's like your brain wants to go back to the mission, sort of, but you're like, wait, I know I'm not doing that now. I know this is about real, genuine connection where people can be real with each other, and we're not being pulled along by some wizard at the top.
Yeah.
With like the microphone.
The wizard with the microphone. Exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's, okay, I'm going to start these comments because I want to go back to them. But
well, let me add on to that. Just like that's why a lot of veterans like struggle too, like post active duty. Like they've been accustomed to this lifestyle, and this is how we do life. This is how we do community, and this is how we do work. And then suddenly, there's no transition period. Suddenly you're out of it, and you're having to relearn how to do life again. And and it's the same timeline. You have young people going into the military. They're not married. They're not very
so true.
Fashionable, and like a lot of the same. That's why a lot of people will call the military cult, because you have
that is such a great comparison, though. That is such a great comparison. And then I've heard, like, I don't know if Hollywood does it justice, but like I kind of like watching the military shows, not like the documentaries, but I mean like the fake, like the entertainment stuff, And it seems like they're super tight. Like, is that true?
Yeah.
Military, like even once you're out, I've heard that. Yeah. Like once you're in, and you're sort of like, that's your brother forever, your sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, is that true? Would you say?
It pretty much starts in boot camp, like that's, where it starts. You can't trust anyone but who's with you in your group, and also, other people, civilians not having that similar experience of military life, and not understanding that kind of world. I mean, it was a huge adjustment for me when I got married. And I was like, whoa, this is way different than what I had thought. So huge learning curve there. But
You mean like leaving the military or?
entering the military, I mean, I'm
Okay.
a civilian. My wife was in the Navy for 8 years,
Okay.
and she had already been in for 6 years, I want to say, when I went over. She was stationed in Japan when I went over, and so
Okay.
it's a huge learning curve for me of like adjusting to life and realizing, wow, like this goes way deeper than just having a job, like
Mm.
because it's your entire life. Like you are not
Yeah.
left alone 24/7.
Yeah.
So I was a leader's kid growing up at a vineyard, which, you know, was definitely healthier than I have. But, you know, it was like a growing church plant. My parents were worship leaders, and, you know, I love Mr. Wan.
Yeah.
So, you know, I remember, you know, we moved to be closer to the church, and, you know, we had, there was like, you know, worship practice Sunday morning, and then you had all Sunday, and then, you know, like Saturday, sometimes there was a practice. Thursday, there was a practice. But there's also a home group on Wednesday. And so, and my life centered around it, and what I could do, like sports wise, centered around it, and that kind of thing. And I remember one day we were driving from the airport back, and I saw this like housing complex, like apartment, and it's like, if you lived here, you'd be home now, kind of deal, but it was
Oh
sort of
yeah.
like
I know what you're talking
set.
about.
Yeah. But the ones where they're new and it's a developing area. And hey, Jake, this is a open group. So we have Christians here, we have liberals here, we have agnostics here, we have conservatives here. We've just all been in one of those groups, and we're processing the experiences together. And kind of the idea is that you can be who you are and come as you are. So whether, wherever you're at, and then we all kind of hold something for each other from our own journeys, because it's a pretty unique place to have been and recovered from. So a lot of us have Christian backgrounds. Some of us still are Christians, some of us are not. There you go. So Hillsong, yes, that is very relatable. I'm sure you have fantastic insights. So kind of our baseline, and I think you missed the beginning, but the way we approach it is we just speak from our own experience, and that way we're not like prescribing anything to anyone. And so like Adam and I have really different, I don't know how different, but we have different beliefs on certain points. And Adam just speaks from who he is, and I speak from who I am. Jadelle speaks from who she is. And in that, I think there's a lot of wisdom, and kind of the grounding anchor point for all of us is that each of us carrying some light within us that we can hold out to each other in the midst of grief. That's kind of where we're coming from.
I love how you put that.
I stole it from Jed.
Oh yeah. Well, Jed is the true wizard.
I love Jed.
Us.
Yeah. But so, he had this great example of, it's a great example for, it fits really well with what we're talking about now. But Jed, he was on here the first week, Jed Hartley, his dad, Bob Hartley. He was a prophet, right? Who was actually data mining and an abuser and alcoholic. And so, Jed came on here and was talking with us, and he was talking about how that story of Jephthah, right? He's the guy, his daughter, he's going to war, and he says to God, I will, Jephthah? Man, it's a J name. But he says to God, if you allow me to win this battle, I will sacrifice the first living being that comes into my sight. And so he comes home after winning the battle, and his daughter is the first living being that walks into his sight. And he's like, shoot, now I have to carry out my vow. And so he puts his daughter on the altar, but first she requests, like, hey, let me go out into the wilderness and like mourn, you know, that I'll never have a full life. And so she takes like her friends, she goes out into the wilderness. And Jed's statement was, I've always wondered, as someone who has felt like I was sacrificed on the altar of my parents' ministry, which is a feeling all of us can relate to. I feel like we were all, our youth was sacrificed on the altar of the greater mission. We were the fuel for that fire on the altar. You know, he said, I've always wondered why did she come back? Why didn't she stay in the wilderness? And his answer was that the wilderness feels really dark and really scary. And so you go back to the place that you know and the light that you know. Wow. But then he was talking about this experience he had where he went to somewhere in India, and they were up in the Himalayas, and there were some monks, and he was going to witness to the monks, and they had this like really deep peace and stability with him that he was recognizing. And the more he tried to witness to them, the more, and the kindness, like these monks were so kind, so like gentle hearted, and they're just letting him do his missionary thing. And he realizes that whatever they're carrying in them is a brighter light than he's holding out.
Wow.
And that he should be learning from them. And so his closing statement, and it was kind of our first week, was, yeah, the wilderness is really dark and scary, but you can look for the lights. There are so many people who have light within them, and they're holding it out to you. And if you look for that light and add it to your light.
Oh, that's so good. Oh,
it was beautiful. And it mirrors this really beautiful song that was this huge comfort to me when I left IHOP. By Cloud Cult, is a band by a dude who left a cult in St. Louis or Minnesota. Sorry, really similar to IHOP, end of the world type little cult. Probably some crossover.
Deity cult, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and she's got this great song, and it says, "Please excuse the light coming out of my head." Oh man. Oh, it's so good. It's I'll look it up because I'm halfway there now.
Gotta look it up.
Here we go. Oh, I cry every time that I see the lyrics. I'm just gonna read them. Mama said the stars are the universe's eyes. I can feel them watching over me most of the time. We grew up believing we could learn how to fly. We came from the earth, but we belong to the sky, which he's referencing like the cult. Like we grew up believing we could learn how to fly is his way of talking about the spirituality, right? I saw your soul without the skin attached. You've got the guts of the coyote pack. We've been kissed, we've been cut, but we do what needs doing. We're just rainbows dreaming we're human. So please excuse the light shooting out of my head. I keep them in a cage, but they come out when they see a friend. You must be a friend. You're never really going to have control of it all. You best get cool with where your chip's going to fall. We are the sun and mother's milk and cuss words and poetry. And the whole song is, I mean, then it's like, he's like, you know, there's no use running unless you run like heck. The best things we learned from the wreck. Jesus coming back as a woman this time. Handing out hugs in the clinic line. Someone tell the devil we don't need no help. We're all pretty good at beating up ourselves. And like the whole thing is about the trauma. His son died. And there you go, morning, Susan is crying. You know, but I mean, all of it. It's so relatable. As kids, we believed the angels talked. Everything's magic till you think it's not. It's easy to be thankful for the things you got. It takes guts to give thanks for the things you've lost,
Mm.
which I always cry over every time. We grew up believing good wins over bad, so you gave away your heart, but then the wolves attacked. And then a bigger heart grew back, which is what I always see in this community. Which is why I always cry at this song. So please excuse the words coming out of my mouth. I'm a happy man, but there's some things I need to get out. And so, like, I don't know. I love that song because that's what I see in everyone who's come out of that place is
Yeah.
just everyone has their heart ripped out. And then they grow this bigger heart where they literally are coming back to care for people who are in the wreck that they know, you know.
I wish I could express words like you do around this stuff, but I feel when you read those words, I feel it viscerally. Like,
it's such a good song. I'll drop a link to it in the chat. It's called No Hell, but the whole album has songs that really he's got a couple albums and they really touch on grief in a way that I think relates to what a lot of us have been through. Drop that in there. I make all of my friends listen to it like every 3 or 4 months. I randomly bring it.
Awesome.
So I've gotten I can leave it alone for a quarter of a year now.
Bookmarking that.
All right. So now that I'm monologued about my favorite song. Do you guys want to keep discussing this? Let me feel things out. Do you guys want to keep talking about this? Or do you guys want to jump into like something else like Allen Hood's statement? And I'm asking the chat and I'm asking Janelle and Adam.
Okay, sorry.
Everybody. No, I'm asking you guys too. I'm asking everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's something on this whole grief thing. Like, I don't know, and that's just me talking, just in my experience. But I'm open to anything.
No, I personally am feeling what we're talking about. I don't care as much about Allen. We'll maybe jump to Allen, but I want to hear. You guys have any thoughts?
I'll say this. It kind of some of the stuff you're talking about with this song that you quoted. This has been years ago, but I can't remember who said this, but I totally believe this with all my heart. But Chris Martin, Coldplay, the Coldplay guy, like,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell y'all, like, I've connected with God deeper than probably I have. I don't know. I don't even know how to put it, but like, and the dude says he believes in Zeus, no less.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just came to a point where, you know what? That's fine. I can hold that in suspense over here. And what's coming out of his heart is that light you're talking about. Like, and I don't know what he went through to be able to vulnerably emote that from a stage in front of God knows how many people. But like that, I'm thinking about the song, what is it? The Lights Will Guide You Home. That song has, I don't know. I struggle to put it into words what it's done for me and the deep parts that I would just call grief and just raw, complete raw. Like, yeah.
Do you know what is really interesting?
What comes out of it's not just what comes out of his mouth, it's what comes out of his life.
Yeah.
And his creativity is yeah, incredibly healing to me personally. Like, and I feel like that is a way I connect with God, like through somebody else's experience in navigating their grief and loss. And that might sound morbid, but I actually find meaning in that. Um, so it actually brings me joy. Yeah, that Fix You song. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, fun fact, nerd fact. In Acts 17, Paul actually alludes to Zeus and uses it as a reference to God. He's referencing a poem about Zeus. Which is crazy. And then instead he is referencing it about God. And so I think there's something to that idea that I just think it feels like light speaks to light, you know?
Yeah.
And you recognize that. And I think one of my weird moments this week has just been that watching in frustration, watching my voice be dismissed because I don't have like the label Christian, because I don't know where things sit for me.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I could say like Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life right now. Like I don't feel it. And I would have so many caveats about that. I think love is the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't fall into orthodoxy.
Yeah.
So I'm not a Christian, I guess. And watching men like Russell Brand just be people, like the number of people who are like, yeah, he's fine. He's confessed his faith. I mean, 8 women have allegations of rape against him, but he's Christian enough for us. And going like, man, why? I'm taking a minute here.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you, Susan.
No, I'm laughing at these comments. Really wish I could get Coldplay Joy for less than 500 to get. Hey, at least it's not a worship conference, and then at least it's cheaper than Corey Russell's.
Well, hey, so
subscription.
side note though, Sean Foyt, if y'all are interested, Sean Foyt actually has a cheaper version of his subscription. His is only 99 cents, and he said he'll pray for you. And
God, I pray for my 99 subscription. 99 cents.
Melissa's gonna post the screenshot if it'll let her.
So ridiculous. So ridiculous. All right.
Back to your.
No, it's frustrating to, I talk about Christianity feels like the family I grew up in, and it's like my home culture, my old neighborhood, whatever. And it feels like if you if you don't have the name anymore, they're like.
Melissa, that was great.
Somebody get Sean Foyt to save me. Yeah, you're just out, and all this stuff, all that investment you made just means nothing. And that's wild to me.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like when you leave a church anyway. You're no one to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was talking to another Bethel exfiltrator this week, and anyway, and unpacking because when we left Bethel, we kind of felt like we did. We felt like we were forgotten. Like we were so in the in crowd too, and you leave and you feel like I didn't exist. It's as if it never even was.
Yep.
And it was just interesting too, because that was his experience. And I think that's been a lot of people's experience. once you're off-boarded from the machine and you're no longer a cog, well, you're not useful anymore to the overall bottom line. So, and I don't think that every leader is necessarily intentionally doing that. I think there are still some, maybe, I don't know, maybe some leaders that have a shred of good left in them, that they haven't fully sold their soul to money or whatever it is. But by and large, like, you are forgotten. And I feel like the few times that I've gone into a church since 2011, I think I feel like how most of the people that don't even believe in God feel when they go into church. Like, this is the most unwelcoming, weird place that I've ever been, and I don't ever want to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't mean to laugh at that, but I'm laughing at the weird. It just, it's, I don't know. Some of the meaning just feels like it gets stripped away or something at a certain point,
Yeah.
you know? I'm going to jump into this, can we stop on weird for an hour? Forgotten and avoided when they find out you're deconstructing. Yeah. And that I saw Melissa had a comment earlier. Melissa, yeah, post whatever in comments. I don't know if it'll work or not. But yeah,
Okay.
just I saw an earlier comment by Melissa saying, like, I feel like I'm too Christian. But I'm not deconstructed enough for other spaces. And I feel like for me, it's like, I just like, it has been really hard to find people who just, I mean, maybe I am still too Christian. I don't really know. Like, I'm obsessed with justice. I like I don't know. I just like feel way too deeply about things. I don't know, man. But it just feels like, yeah, I don't fit anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna pull up Ellen Hood's statement. I'm gonna transition us because I know some people want to talk about that. But before I do, I want to say this. So there's going to be a lot of different reactions. And what I want us hopefully to do is I want us, this is a point of open spaces, is to be open to other people's perspectives on it, because we're not all going to have the same reaction. And that's okay. So if we read this and you're like, man, I love Alan, that was amazing, that's okay. If you read this and you're like, I'm angry because he didn't do why can't he this? Why can't he that? That's okay too. There's space for those. And what we want to do is actually process through some of those and give a, I want to use the word, like, just like honor your own reaction to it.
Yeah.
Good.
And if there's leaders watching, I want to say this, you don't have to watch this part. You can, if this is helpful for you in other ways, great. But you might hear some hard perspectives that are not, and what I would encourage you to do is, if you want to sit and listen, because we do stream this live, I'd encourage you to perspective take and approach it with curiosity. Approach it with the kind of understanding that you want extended to you as you're processing and you're doing, the best that you can with what you feel like you have. Understand that is the same thing that's happening here. It's not, I want to move away from these are angry, bitter XI helpers.
Yeah.
And encourage everyone to humanize what they see and hear. And if you're not in a place where you can do that, that's okay. then I would encourage you to step away. So,
also acknowledging that like we all like individually we have unique experiences, even though we have had, we've all been through the same place and similar experiences. Each of us has a very unique lived experience in relation to different people, or just the space of IHOP KC. And so acknowledging that, various experiences can all exist within the same space.
yeah.
And some people had a more positive experience. Others were, it was a brutal experience. And so
Those two don't cancel each other out.
right, exactly.
You are allowed to take the good that you experienced with you, and you are also allowed to
make space for both.
Yeah.
In place.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Chanel, you want to read it? I'm really bad at reading aloud.
Well, okay, so this is a really long one though.
Oh, yeah, it is. That's true. We can skip around. We don't need all this preamble. We can maybe skip some of that. I don't know how to scroll through it.
Uh-oh.
Tech
support.
Shoot.
Okay, so he kind of opens up, he's I told Susan this feels like a letter from Paul.
Yeah.
Like it was one of the missing books of the Bible. Like it's addressing the wider community, and and so he kind of goes into we've had this report. I was happy to see he acknowledged, this was the extensive amount of information that was given, the amount of time, people, and effort that was put into this investigation. And unfortunately, a lot of it was missed, not included. And I appreciate that he said that. That, for some victims, it was reduced to a couple of sentences, and that's really hard. And so he starts out with that, and then he goes into a series of apologies for his place as a leader, and the influence he has held as a result, and how so many who have trusted him and his word, and so it's a lot. Like I don't even know what parts to pick out, really.
I loved the acknowledgement that a lot of people came and felt safe because of his presence and his encouragement. Because I will say there were a couple times where I was like, dude, Mike Bickle irritates the hell out of me. Dave feels incredibly immature, and there's a lot I don't love. And then, it felt like Alan just seemed very sincere. He had, a actual degree, which felt like that's worth something. He was like the educated one, and I couldn't scroll through that because it was somebody else's screen who is not tech supporting at this moment. There we go. And there's, however they had it laid out, worked a lot better, but here we are.
You're doing great, Susan.
So here we go. There we go. Now we're back to where we are. So I did appreciate that part. Here we go. Here we got a comment. I appreciate the heart behind his apology and how far he's come. It felt like this was as far as Alan was willing to go. There's a lot of stuff he's carefully not saying in this apology. Yeah, I think so. He doesn't call it a cult.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
He, man, I had actually written up some thoughts.
There was one part that really stood out to me that I was really, and I talked this out a little bit before with Susan. We were just talking about how like we deeply loved Alan Hood and still do. Like I feel like for myself personally, my experience as a student, I really respected him the most. He had the most genuine, earnest heart and just seemed like an all-around good guy, good dad, good husband. And was just very tender-hearted. And it was the kind of male figure that I didn't see very often in my life. And so coming out on the other side of this, I kind of hold him to a higher standard because of that. And so it's a little hard sometimes to kind of check that. But the big one that really stood out to me was how he still called Mike his spiritual father in a lot of ways, and basically said, Mike, like, what was the words, Susan? I don't want to say this the wrong.
He says that let's find it, because this was a part that stood out to a lot of people.
It was a really big one.
And I do, we can go back because I felt like he owned a lot that was his to own.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mike was.
It was up there.
Hold on, I'm going back through the letter to Paul. It's so long.
Chapter and verse.
It would have been easier. I think, is the word brilliant? No, intelligent. There we go. He was my spiritual, he does use past tense here. He was my spiritual hero, a powerfully charismatic man with an international platform who I admired and sought to emulate. He was the most intelligent, charming, and spiritually disciplined man I had ever met. I loved him dearly, prayed for him often, and was eager to learn as much as possible. So it's this next line.
Yes, that was the part.
And I feel like I don't know what biblical truths Mike taught that weren't absolutely run of the mill. I feel like he more obscured biblical truths.
And I know a lot of people may disagree with my point of view. I hold a little more of a critical eye, knowing looking at the big picture of how he had constructed this organization, and it really provided an avenue of giving him more access to victims. And I really struggle with, when people try to suss out, like, what was good, what was bad. And I have a really hard time seeing Mike. I highly doubt that any of it was meant for good.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
And
no, keep going. Sorry.
No, I struggle with that. And I know that, I recognize that it's hard to get to that place when you've devoted your career, your life purpose, ministry, your family, like everything you've committed to this organization, and everything that it stands for. And so, it's going to be hard to separate yourself from that. when everything that you believe is based on that foundation. And especially as a leader who's still actively, participating in ministries and organizations, and a lot of people are listening and watching, and there's still a line that you have to walk, and I get that. Like I think that I'm gonna throw a Wicked reference in here. Sorry, guys. But this moment where, it's the moment where Elphaba's got the broom, and she says, "Glinda, like, are you gonna come with me? Like, are you going to join me by taking this radical choice of completely stepping away from this life that we know, these people that we thought that were good and we looked up to and were our, in a sense, spiritual fathers." And Glinda is not able to get on the broom with her. She can't go that far.
Yeah.
And she's still asking Elphaba, like, please just say you're sorry. Just, try to work this out. And so, like, I see a lot of that kind of happening, in these spaces where it's like, how far are we willing to go?
How abandoned will we let us be?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry for that.
No. Getting a call.
No, I agree. So I have this like dual reaction because there's a couple in here. Like, did he reject the prophetic history? What he said was, he does sort of. He says, blah, 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 due to the moral standards surrounding those given the prophetic words and the spiritual manipulation practiced in the sharing of these prophetic words, the prophetic history, which he puts in quotes, should be permanently set aside. He doesn't say whether or not he thinks it's false. Now, what I also hold space for, so first of all, I do think he takes responsibility for a lot. And I see him specifically naming things and expressing sincere grief over the way that it has impacted people. So I do, I appreciate that. And if he were in front of me, I would say, hey, I appreciate it. It would mean something to me that he could recognize that, because I think that empathy piece, when I see empathy in someone, I don't need them to figure everything out right away, but
Totally,
I do.
ditto. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but then there's this tension in me because, so on the one hand, I think about where I was 1, 2, 3 years post IHOP. It wasn't a 180 for me. It took me years to sort through it. Years of detangling. I am 17 years out.
Yeah.
And there are some things that I've still only recently put together, and I have worked hard, and I've been out of the church for even more years than 10 probably.
Yeah.
So, and being with people who weren't in that tight little circle was a big part of what I took. I had to widen my circle very intentionally, which was really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how anyone in leadership could have done that yet. Because all they've done in this last year is deal with this for 2 years, 3 years, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And they've probably only had really each other to process with. Who the frick, or other ministry leaders. So, and I'm not saying that now. On the other hand, so I'm holding that in one hand, and on the other hand, I'm like, can you just, like, there's this feeling of like get on the broom.
Please.
It was perfect. That's the perfect example. I'm like, because I want he addresses so much. So it's hard for me because then I feel like I'm throwing something back. And someone pointed out in a different space, they were like, he didn't call it a cult. Why couldn't he just call it a cult? And then someone, Nicole pointed out in here, he did call it a cult, or he said it had cult-like tendencies. So I think I don't want to get too semantic-y if it's not fair to, he's got another one here. This is an intentional nod. Grateful for all those, amazed at victims' resiliency, grateful to all those in advocacy who have shown me a more excellent way to honor Christ and stand with those who are suffering. And then this is a little dig. I look to leaders. I look forward to the day when true shepherds and loving elders receive allegations with a commitment to trauma-informed safe governance. I mean, he's acknowledging that they just freaking haven't.
Yeah.
That day is not yet here, and advocates must stand with the abused and silence now more than ever. So that's a far cry from due process, but it's that thing you're describing where Alan was probably the one I liked the most. And that's probably why I think we all want him to, untangle.
Rebuke.
Yeah. I don't know. That's and I don't know. You guys can put in the chat kind of how you feel about it. You guys don't have to agree with me. I think I have frustration and appreciation all at one time, and I don't know how to hold those two together.
I mean, the
hard
word
to do
he
that.
has in bold here towards the end, I think, is
Yeah. Many leaders in the prayer movement and the charismatic church world have remained silent, awaiting an independent investigation's conclusions. It has come. Please be silent no longer. The next generation of leaders and churches must witness a righteous response. If you remain silent, the cult of personality will continue to be exalted above integrity and faithfulness, and the mistrust of the church by the next generation will continue to grow. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, Nicole's bringing it. We want him to light the match. Yeah. I think that I just want someone in leadership to throw down. And
sorry to interrupt, I think that's part of I so appreciate the unfiltered, blips and clips and stuff from Joel Richardson. Like, even though it's different context, Michael Brown right now, but similar vein of this, of where in that clip, we were listening to it last night. It's like, and Joel has said this before. He's like, I'm willing to risk my entire reputation and run my ministry into the ground and go back and paint houses for a living. Because what we're witnessing and what he's witnessing is straight up BS. And like, he told Michael Brown straight up, like, be a man, own up to what you did. End of story. It's simple as that. You don't have to wait until the end of the investigation. In his case, he's still waiting, but in this case, the IOP, it's come and gone, and the ship has sailed. So I'm with y'all. Like, where is the rest of the freaking leadership, not just at IOP, but everywhere else? Like, nobody is saying a word. Alan is here, but like, to your point, like, go further. Thank you for supporting victims. I'm with y'all on that. I agree. But yeah, I also agree that there's still ground to take in a sense. Like, there's still room for them to just unfilter it. Like, everybody can tell when somebody's being a politician. Just take the filter off, say what you mean.
Yeah.
And because everybody else, all the little people like us, are thinking it.
Yeah.
And
And I think,
anyway, I do see his empathy, Susan. I do see that for sure.
yeah, I
I
do.
appreciate. I think that out of everybody in the IHOP circles, like Alan has exhibited probably the closest thing to repentance that any of us have seen. Like, even though Alan, none of the allegations were against him to my knowledge, but like he's included himself in this, like asking for forgiveness, not just in this statement,
Yeah.
but like in other interviews and videos and stuff. So I appreciate that. Like, that goes a long way for those of us who don't trust pastors, and like I don't trust any of y'all. But when I hear
Yeah.
somebody like that say that, that makes me want to trust you a little bit.
Hmm.
I think one of the pains for me, and this is a hard, so I'm going to qualify it. So you're going to hear me say this, but then I want to I'm going to qualify it. So wait till the end before you
Pop off.
But what's painful for me, and I don't know how it could have gone differently, but what's painful for me is that people were saying something for years,
Hmm.
and until it was their friend, the leaders couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once it happened to them and it was their friend and they were being spiritually abused,
Mm-hmm.
I think they were spiritually abused before and didn't realize it. And so it's this heartbreak of, why didn't it matter? Why didn't you fight like this when it was
Like Gracia.
this? Yeah. And what's hard is that sometimes they did try,
Mm-hmm.
but unless it's a celebrity leader,
Yeah.
the rest of the world doesn't care, because there
Yeah.
was news coverage about Brad Tebet.
Yeah.
There was.
Right.
And that's the pain is, yes, so I will say they did see it, like they saw it with Tebet. But there were earlier things like Rex, what's his face? Phillips. And he was a funder. And Alan did have him banned, but then he later came back, right?
Yeah.
And Mike fought for that, and not going, and again, sure, it was a different time, but that's painful. That's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens over and over again. And that's pattern. We see that pattern repeated in other other churches and other spaces that mirror this, and then they all cover for each other, or nobody wants to come out and say something and really push. And I think that's why people do appreciate Joel, because he will come out strongly in certain scenarios. But it's, I think that is why a lot of us have had some trouble in general with the apologies, is because it doesn't take away the pain of like, okay, I still wish, it's layered on top of that with the report then, where it didn't matter seemingly, until it was your friends, but then it was my friends. That's why I saw it.
Yeah.
People told me before
Yeah.
he came. And so I have this whole cycle I go through over and over again. It's really hard to see it all before the others in your community do. We're dealing with that at Bethel right now. Not many have woken up to the wrongs yet. Yeah. And so there's this other pain because, you get painted as the problem, you get ostracized.
Right.
And
100%.
Made an example of.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is how it feels. And there's whether or not we would have done better, I have no idea. Man, I would love to hope I would, but I don't know actually. If I hate that about myself, but if I grew up in that culture and I was on that stage and all the other leaders were doing all the same things.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mean, I know that there were moments where I did, and then I got pushed out and left, but then what do you do past that?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for that, because nobody cares if it's not a celebrity leader. So you can scream.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's
and
listening.
to your point, Susan, like just earlier this week, I listened to Jonna Harris's interview with
Yep.
Gracia on,
Love Jana.
yeah. And I loved that she shared at the end, Jonna shared at the end about and then Gracia did too, like and it was along the lines of what you're talking about. Like, I mean, Gracia came forward long before, not minimizing any of the others, of course, in any way, shape, or form. But like, to your point, like she wasn't the celebrity, quote unquote celebrity. I
Yep.
want to be delicate in how I'm just. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. Like, does that make sense? Like, I guess I'm agreeing with what you're saying.
No,
I think
I mean, I was thinking of Gracia when I
excellent
said that.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Fearless Five
But
too,
yet,
and many others that are not remembered and not named. I mean, Alan did give a short reference to the Fearless Five, but I think it really minimizes just the number of people over the years that have spoken up and have said something. And I don't think we'll ever know the true number of people that have attempted to stop this.
No, and like great example is I was looking back through my emails and I found an email that was sent to me by I'm not going to give details, but by a mother whose child had been at IHOP and had suffered irreparable harm. And she had CC'd me on a letter that she sent to leadership. And they never recovered from the impact of what they experienced at IHOP. It was definitely what they experienced, and it was related to the way fasting was done, the way deliverance ministry was done, the way that like the intensity of the schedule. They were night watch, so that immediately tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
And I think there was some involvement with Prisoners of Hope, and she believed that IHOP was and could be a good place, but that it had issues with intensity that needed to be dealt with. And so she messaged the leaders that they had close relationships. And she never got a response. And I still have her letter. It was maybe 14 years ago, something like that. And and everything that she says in there, she's like, the environment that you are subjecting people to is set up to cause in such a way that it's causing harm because you are acting against real human needs and real human health and real human bodies, like nothing. Never. And she tried multiple times and nothing. And it's like, if I know, it's just one over the course of like 30 years. And that was from someone who did believe, but there was no critique that mattered. It didn't matter. If it was criticism, it was wrong.
Right.
And that was really hard.
Yeah.
And so there's where like just culturally in the church, that is what the entire thing feels like right now.
Yeah.
1000%.
Like it does not matter who you are. It doesn't matter until there is such devastating damage that it's undeniable and irreparable, and the bodies are stacked so high that you can't, avoid them anymore. It does not matter and will not be seen and will not be heard.
Yep.
And that's what's so infuriating is it's like just this arrogance.
But I have a theory about this. And I think that by the way, I totally agree with you 1000%. and some of this is financial, right?
Isaiah.
Unless it hits the financial bottom line. However, I will say, I think that if enough of us continue to speak in our little bitty corners with our little bitty voice, and more people sort of get on their journey of like, maybe they're not even full on deconstructing, maybe they're not deconstructing at all, maybe they're just simply asking a question
Yeah.
about, hey, this thing that I saw over here didn't smell, look, or act right to me. You know what I mean? And so if enough people, I guess this is just my optimism coming out, even though I'm not an optimist at all. I'm a very pessimistic person. But there's a little bit of optimism in there that I'm not trying to bypass any of this, by the way. I'm just saying,
No, I'm
like,
not hearing bypassing.
okay, if enough little people just say one thing, could it tip us over to where, like us millennials, especially coming up into full like adulting at this point, right? And taking our place in society, whatever that looks like. And the people that have been running the show are kind of moving towards retirement, and they're going to sunset. Like their generation is going to sunset. And I would like to think that that will result in some widespread change. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen. But yeah, I just have a theory about that and hoping that that pans out, but we'll see.
I think that the level of change that we're able to achieve is only going to come if the people. So this comment right here by Wendy. It feels like your position within these systems impacts how much you are still heard now. And that has been difficult. One of the things that Jonna Harris said on her podcast that I so loved was she was talking about, she was saying, I'm going to badly misquote her. So I'm going to say what my takeaway was from it. How about that?
Sounds
It
good.
sparked a thought. That way I won't misquote her. But it sparked a thought. Well, no, it touched on how I feel, which is that there is such a deep mistrust of people who are outside these systems because we left because it wasn't healthy, because we saw it, the harm. And so I left after 3 years, but I grew up in these systems. So I had a lot more than that, a lot more history with the Kansas City Prophets.
Yeah.
And for a long time at the beginning of this journey, anyone from RFI was, hey, we probably don't want to align with them, because they're bitter, they're angry. We can't trust their perspectives. And this us and them, this insiders, outsiders, this, I was touching about it a little earlier, but the metric that the church uses right now to decide who is and isn't a trustworthy voice is so warped that it shuts them out from the kind of perspectives and insights and learning that they need to do, because there's so much fear of being contaminated. It's the story of the Good Samaritan, and they're like, you've got all the priests walking by.
Yeah.
And who has stepped in to walk through things with victims who are complicated, with victims who aren't, tons of advocates stepped up who were outside the church and had been outside the church for years and were agnostic or were atheist or were working out their faith. And there was this mistrust and this distance, even though they were displaying
Yeah.
far more character than other church leaders.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like I remember even IHOP not wanting to use certain not wanting to use guideposts because guideposts is a book affirming. And and it's unless the church is able to have the humility and go, wow, we missed it, we need to learn from people, we
Yeah.
need to widen our perspective and widen the table.
Yeah.
I worry that they're going to whitewash,
Yeah.
and they're not going to cut deeply enough to remove the root, and it's just going to grow back.
Yeah. I know.
I think it's also redefining. We talk often about what is the fruit, right? What is the fruit of the ministry, the person, and by the fruit you can tell if that
Yeah.
is holy or godly or not. And so there's this really strong line of judgment of if especially I mean honestly these organizations, these ministries are rooted in fundamentalism. And the scripture is inerrant, it's God breathed, you can't
But
it.
their specific interpretation.
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go. For sure.
And so it's only defined in one way, right?
Yeah.
And if anything deviates from that, regardless of what the fruit is, it's immediately called out as that's the enemy. That's
Yeah.
That's
and
the enemy. You nailed it.
instead
That's
of
that us versus them
acknowledging
stuff.
it
Yeah.
for the fruit that it is,
Right.
and um, and that's really what started my personal deconstruction, of just realizing like, whoa, like we're supposed to love people, we're supposed
Mm.
to honor what is sacred in the life force of humanity. Like we we're supposed to be honoring each other, and there is so much more in this world that can be seen as holy. I mean, I remember my, when we were in Japan and traveling, and seeing these different like temples and customs, and I witnessed some really beautiful moments of just pure, tender, holy moments of love and endearment, and I was, to me, I was like, that is God, like how that expression is God, and that is holy. And but yet, I had friends that were, they were visiting as missionaries, and all they saw was darkness. They didn't see the beauty.
Yeah,
And
it's through that lens of like fear.
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and it made me really sad because I was like, there's so much beauty and holiness that you're missing, because of this lens that you're filtering things out of. But yeah, now I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, that I actually now I'm trying to talk while typing, which was a terrible idea. If you would like to join the conversation, you click this link and hop on. I'm late by a lot, but normally about half an hour ago, we drop a link and we invite people to join us in the conversation. So if you come on and I don't pull you right on all the way, it's just because I'm letting someone finish this a sentence first. It's low pressure. This is like beers with friends, new friends. If you spend 80 to 200 hours with us, we'll become close friends. So you can do that.
And if you join the subscription,
For
Yeah,
99
right.
cents
99 cents a
day.
month. Yeah,
A
that's all
month.
it takes to fuel
Yeah.
revival.
Yeah. So yeah, I dropped the link in the chat, and yeah, you can click it if you'd like. So what? There was a thing you were saying. I'm trying to track back to it before I got distracted. I think that one of the other things that I think is really that's been really interesting to me lately is so there's this, so you were talking about how anything that comes from outside that, like, it's almost like this inability to recognize. And I remember being there myself, like not being able to recognize real love or kindness or whatever, or expressions of tenderness and reverence that were coming from outside of my tight little experience of what was sacred and what was holy. Because exactly what you said, like those things within us, like that are within human beings, that life that's within us, that's sacred, right? And not being able to recognize that outside of this tight little reference point, it is horrifying, because even if you're still from a Christian standpoint, you're talking about all humanity is made in the image of God. So, why shouldn't you be able to recognize the sacred in them?
Yeah.
And so, and I know there was a point when I wasn't, and I'm recognizing more and more how much of that inability comes from this kind of like tangled relationship of power and control.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of my worldview and how much of the way that the church, like the issues that are being perpetuated over and over and over, have to do with the church's relationship with power and control.
Yeah.
Like, what's the first response when victims speak out? It's to control how they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we more likely to listen to? So, when, for example, it is when Joel says something, when any leader says something who is in a position of power, more people listen to it, right? To Wendy's point. And it doesn't matter how imperfect or even sometimes harmful some of the other things that they're doing are, or the way that they're doing it is. We are more likely to, it's still more likely to be accepted than someone who is advocating with excellence, who's been doing that stuff because they're experienced, because they know what they're doing, but they're not in a position of power. And so there's such a respect for power within the church, like a worship of power.
Yeah.
And you think about the charismatic church, everything is chasing power.
Everything's power. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Everything's chasing power. How much power, and so, and then on the flip side of that, you have the control. We have to control how holiness is expressed. We have to control how worship is done. We have to control how we bring allegations forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's under this guise of righteousness. But if we really cared about righteousness, we would be doing righteousness. We would care about, is righteousness being done for these victims? And it never fucking is. It's never being done.
Like, and I'm gonna botch this verse, but when Jesus was like, what y'all are doing is you're straining out a gnat, but you're swallowing a camel. Like, you're missing the whole forest for the trees.
Yeah.
No, there is more when a victim comes forward. they will strain the gnat of
Yes.
the victim's response
That's it.
and swallow the camel
That's
of
it.
platforming an abuser. And I'm
1000%.
so tired of it. I'm so tired of it.
Yeah. Yep.
We all feel that. I mean, I think we all viscerally feel it. Those of us that have seen the behind the curtain. And sorry, my little bit of a throat thing going on. But yeah, it's like you're gonna guard the gold chest until the death. And I think that is the silver lining. Like when the cash flow dries up and these guys don't have anything else to do for a living, I mean, maybe that will be I don't know. It's just my optimism trying to peek its way out. But yeah.
I mean, it depends, because for some of them, for a narcissist,
True.
you know,
Like
it's
it doesn't
not
matter.
necessarily the money. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the
supply of
recognition. Yeah,
people.
they can be poor as hell. I mean, look at Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure he had like some offshore accounts or something like that. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm sure he wasn't dirt poor, but he drove a crappy car. He wore those Costco shirts. But this part, no one can be a leader without followers. I mean, that's true.
But the whole narcissism thing, though, it's true. Like I'm trying to learn about narcissism right now after having sat under their several narcissist spells over the past 15 plus however many years. And one was in the context of a for-profit company that happened to be a Christian company. And like the level of evil, like I still don't know where to put that. It's still in the mystery box. Like, and back to Mike, like people have theorized that the entire construct was totally intentional, like down to the persona of the Costco shirts and the shirts and everything else, or the shoes. But behind the scenes, like, who knows if he was filthy rich? And I don't know. Who knows? Who really knows? But narcissism, Susan, power, control, and then money seems to always be in the mix too. Money and sex, like sexual deviancy.
Well, because sexual abuse is all about power and control.
Yeah.
The money, I heard someone make a great comment online. They said, I think the money comes from their entitlement. And I thought that was fascinating. But the rest, they thought it was all for the accolades. I don't know where to put that.
Will you say more about that? I'm trying to like grasp what you're saying here.
So they were saying that, and this is just a comment that I was reading. It was like part of a larger conversation, but just that, the narcissistic supply, that's about just being seen as the one who has the answers, the one who has the power, the one who has, who is God's chosen, and being revered. And that's what the narcissist is after. And so, whereas, the money stuff, a narcissist might, take a vow of poverty if it gets them that reverence. And so they were saying they wondered if the money part wasn't necessarily why they're pursuing these things in the first place, and that their abuse of finances more has to do with their sense of entitlement, because they just feel like they're entitled to it.
I see.
But that's not like their end goal. Like because if money was their end goal, there's probably other decisions they might have made.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah. So, and that tracks. So I don't think it's the main motivator, but I certainly think it's a motivator. I think it really is needing to be seen certain ways. And
yeah, absolutely. I think it's, I mean, if you think about the personalities of these people that take the platforms, They're very passionate. They're very convincing, charismatic in the personality sense, not the
Mhm.
spiritual sense,
Yeah.
and inspiring. And they make you want more. And it's that draw, like it automatically draws people in.
Mhm.
And they could say just about anything or regurgitate just about anything.
Right.
Because of the influence of their personality. And that's the very core of narcissistic people. They know how to say things that people want to hear. And it draws people in, regardless of the validity that their words hold. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the, founders of big companies that we all know that created things that we didn't have before, like iPhones and whatever else you want to add to the list, like they probably were narcissists too. And they
absolutely.
were terrible to work for. They were terrible bosses. They were probably
Mhm.
terrible parents and terrible spouses and
Yeah.
whatever else.
Yeah.
But it took like, and it's unfortunate because it's like, what was the cost of that? How many people get sucked up into that black hole of their orbit with the end goal of being whatever the end goal was, whether it's a spiritual end goal or a product that you hold in your hand or whatever else. Again, mission over people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see the same. I mean, so I've been watching these documentaries of like We Work,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Elizabeth Holmes and like all these other like
Yes.
very charismatic people who literally had no experience, didn't know what the hell they were talking about, but they
Hmm.
were able to convince these billionaires, hey, invest in me. Like,
Yeah.
I've got this great idea and nothing to show for it,
Right.
but they were able to convince the whole world, to follow them
Yeah.
and invest in them. And yeah, I see the correlations quite a bit within the church as well. We like to think that the church is immune because, well, these people were appointed by God. They
Mhm.
have calling over their lives. But we have a lot of the same things happening, that we see
I
on
want
the side.
I want to almost pull out. Okay, so bear with me here. But I was talking with a friend a couple weeks ago, and she was like, "But why? What is it about us that was attracted to these narcissistic leaders, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like, why am I attracted to them?"
Mhm.
Another friend of mine was, she was like, "I feel like I'm just like, I have like a, like, you know how some people have like an addictive personality? She was like,
Yeah.
I feel like I have that for cults." And like, like I had a little bit of that in me. I joined a second cult, which is really common after you leave your first cult.
Yeah.
I
We
joined a
did that
weirder
too.
one. I managed to, yeah. I was like, it's smaller, so it's less of a cult. No, it was more. Figured it out faster. So
Well,
there
hey,
was
you got
that.
to take the positive. We got to take the
Yeah,
win.
we turned it over in 6 months. Um, but but then I had to move back from New Mexico, and that kind of sucked. So yeah, but I think some of it for me, this is going to be like a painful thing to say, but I think some of it for me came from, so if you think about where all these teachings come from, right? Are teaching
Hmm.
about like who God is. And I think some of my teaching about who God was really narcissists overlaying their own image onto God, right?
Hmm.
Um, because from my perspective, and I've been pretty open about this, I don't know what I believe about God right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even believe God exists, but if God exists, I believe God is love. And anything that I'm going to believe is going to come from that.
Yeah.
That was the one piece where I had to find an anchor for myself and go back to.
Mm.
Mhm.
And so what I picked was love,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I knew that love was good. And so, Paul, I need you to come on here and unpack that, because this is interesting.
Why was I
A
attracted?
deep sense of insignificance. Okay, this
Yeah.
is where I'm going with this, Paul. This is exactly where I'm going with this thing about God. What they taught us about God was he's so big and you're so small. And isn't it great that you matter to him because you mean
Yeah.
nothing?
That's
You have
absolutely.
no significance, but God loves you. So because he loves you, you matter. Not you
Mhm.
inherently matter. You are inherently good. You are inherently a good person. Nothing. That was never there.
Yep.
And I know, like, whatever, original sin, but that's not my point. Your first, if we really believe the Bible, right, or whatever the hell,
Yeah.
your first and truest identity was always a child of light. Always was. It never fucking wasn't. You weren't a
Yeah.
piece of shit. That's not in the Bible. That's not there.
Yeah.
That's Calvinism, and I don't like them. He was a jerk. John Calvin was the worst person.
He
They're
really,
not.
No one
They're
liked
not the
John
nicest people
Calvin.
in the
Didn't
world.
like John Calvin, and you can tell.
Yeah, I know.
Calvinists don't like. No, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
It's like a Calvinist somewhere listening to this.
sorry guys.
No, but you nailed it though. That is, Melissa and I have asked ourselves that question too. Like, why did we? You know, and for me it was 3. I was in 3, and so, but I'm not going back now. But like, I'll just be vulnerable about what I believe about God. I mean, I still think he's
Sorry. Yes,
First
my
Susan
translation of the
3:12.
Bible would have a lot of F-bombs. That is. Anyway, sorry. Keep
No,
going.
you're good. It's interesting because I kind of just feel like I'm a regular guy that just walks around and lives his life. And there are a lot of other people in the world that need help. And I'm just a regular guy, one of billions of people on the planet. And so I actually struggle to believe that God loves me. Like, even though I was pumped full of that stuff for most of my life, like fundamentally, I don't think I actually believe that. Interestingly. So I want to latch on to what you're saying, Susan. Like, I want to believe that that's true. Fundamentally, I don't know if I do. And that's what I'm wrestling with.
I feel like this is where we get into attachment theory.
Melissa said, oh, yeah.
I have very little understanding of these things, but the understanding I do have, I know that I have a insecure moving to secure attachment, I've been told. Susan just disclosing her status.
There you go.
Everyone state your attachment status real quick for the record. No. But so, and that means that, and I think that's taught to us in church at a really young age, like, because sin can come between you and God, remember? And they can tell you that verse. All they want to tell you that, neither life nor death, nor angels nor demons, nor whatever the frick can come between you and the love of God. Except they're like, except for you messing up. That sure can.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember Rick Joyner teaching that when I was at Morningstar a long freaking time ago.
And at IHOP, they specifically taught that your intimacy with God determined your proximity, which was deeply damaging for anyone who had a deep sense of insignificance or disconnection or just anxiety.
Yeah.
If you had anxiety, you were F.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Church reinforces codependency and fawning. Ancient and fearful attachment. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of you were fawning in worship?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like, oh fuck, I better tell God he's great. Or he might not love me.
Wasn't
You
there a
know,
song that was like,
like,
I am nothing, you're everything.
Yeah.
I'm nothing. I
which
deserve
totally
nothing.
plays
I
into
refuse
that.
to sing this one. That I deserve nothing. I deserve hell. Whatever. You
Yes.
give me. You
Oh
give
my
me. Come on, help me out. Justin Rizzo sing it non-stops. No, Paul. No, you should be able to join. Hold on. I've done something
Just to
wrong.
work on another browser besides Chrome.
Yeah, it should. You should even be able to click it on your phone. Here, hold on. Invite. Copy. I know. The thing is let's try. You owe me nothing. I deserve hell. I knew someone would
Yes.
know. I knew someone would know. Okay, Paul, I'm just gonna message it to you on Facebook. We're gonna throw it in Messenger, see if that helps. But yeah, I want Paul to come yell with me about deep senses of insignificance. You know, here we go. They're bringing it. So I stand with arms high and heart abandoned.
Yes.
Yeah, and
That's it.
That's what's so difficult is we've got Paul.
Yay.
Something worked.
Hey,
All right,
Paul.
Nick, maybe if I message you, you'll be able to join too. Let me try. Oh, you know what? No, I got to go over to Facebook to do that. I'll figure that out because I don't have him on Messenger. Yeah. So, Paul, introduce yourself and give your thoughts while I try to navigate Facebook. Putting you straight on the spot. Uh-oh, can we hear you okay? Yeah, we can.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna do something here. I'm going to close one tab. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hey, I just want to say, hey, my name's Paul for anybody that is out there and doesn't know me. And you'll see me on Twitter as Paul K with a little green P.
Yep.
So
I just
Adam,
made that
Adam, I
connection
talk
right
with you
now.
every once in a while. Susan, I'll talk with you.
Yeah.
And I guess just the thing of insignificance. I think when I looked at a leader like Mike, there was something in him that told me, hey, if I can hitch my wagon to this guy, my life will mean something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that insignificance was instilled in me, but it was definitely there. And I think that growing up in the church, I think I was taught, and I try to put this simply, that the only people who mattered to God were the people on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only people that had any significance or worth.
Mm.
So I thought, if I could be one of those people or hitch my wagon to one of those people, then I'll have some significance.
Man, this is like...
Or like the mantle. That reminds me of like desiring the mantle of like these other prophets or leaders within the movement.
Right.
I definitely remember, Corey Russell and others like talking about like praying for the mantle.
Mm.
It's really interesting because what you're saying is, I think what's so, like, the first thing that kind of stands out to me, because it kind of like hit a little deep, and I think it's like something about the way we did church and the way we did community actually reinforced a lack of value to everybody who was there. So like you got everybody in a room and the only person who mattered was the dude on stage. And somehow the way we set it up made every other person. And I think it's just that everything about the way that it was set up was that this dude gets on a stage and tells you all the things he's achieved and tells you how to be like him. And here's the crazy experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do what I do and you commit your life to prayer, you're gonna have that too. You're
Right.
gonna be this close with God. You're gonna have this proximity, whatever.
Right.
And you can't measure up to it because it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
you know, it's like you didn't. And then it felt like everyone was competing after that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, like yeah, here we go. I was told of my insignificance in this life because my reward would be in the next. That was
Mm-hmm.
real. Our greatest aspiration was to be nameless and faceless on the platform. Yeah. But I'm just thinking, like, the moments that I've felt significant and like I mattered were moments where, you know, I felt like seen, like someone taking the time to like know me or know my story or actually really little moments. So there have been moments in all this, right, where a close friend of mine has that have been really healing because a close friend of mine saw something happen, knew it would impact me, and just reached out to check on me or took an action to stop something that was happening and going down, like regarding my story or whatever, or paused me or something like that. And like someone actually just intervening and without me, because they knew who I was and they knew me or they knew what mattered to me or what was going to hurt.
Hmm.
And that never happened. And I hope it was just, you're here, and if you put in the work, you'll matter, or something like that. I don't know exactly what. Okay, I'm having trouble even articulating it, but I know
You're
it's.
doing great. I'm
I
tracking.
know it's in there. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add Jake on here too with us. Hey, Jake, how you doing? Well, I think your mic's muted.
Yeah, g'day. Down
There
here
we
in
go.
Australia.
Oh, hey.
Good day,
Nice
mate.
to see you all.
So
Hey.
you are from a Hillsong church.
Christian City Church and Hillsong backdrop. Hillsong used to
Okay.
be called Christian Life Centre back in the day. And,
Yeah.
evolved into it.
Yeah.
G'day, all.
I'm really happy you joined us because I feel like there's so many like parallel experiences in all these different spaces,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and it gives me like a little measure of hope, like that we're all kind of finding each other now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I love this comment here, and anyone jump in. But the moments where I felt seen and valued happened in relationship, never in the prayer room. The prayer room was not a community. And yeah, I think that was a big part of it, is that the whole dynamic was a-relational and reinforced the very opposite. It was like an obstruction to relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't like neck deep like y'all were at IHOP, but I went over to the prayer room and knew, some of y'all that were there formally, and that was definitely the vibe. Like, just feeling that there was not that interaction / connection, and you almost feel like people wanted that, but it just wasn't there. It was like a void or something.
Yeah. 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 I know I definitely tried to reach for it. And it just felt like, I'm not sure what the dynamic was exactly, but I think there was, oh man, it was worse when God TV came on. Yeah, it really was. That was a much worse dynamic because yeah, suddenly we were thrust on a much larger stage. Jake, I don't know if you want to give us a little backgrounder on any of your experience. Don't
Well,
feel pressure to, but
okay. Well, first of all, I'm sorry for Australia unleashing Hillsong to the rest of the world. But no, you'd be amazed how much places like God TV and TBN and IHOP Kansas City Vineyard have made their way into places like Australia, New Zealand, and other parts of the world. I've actually worked in the Pacific and even very remote parts of the Pacific, and it's amazing to see how all that stuff has just infiltrated the mission field, and it's heartbreaking to see. And instead of
wow.
seeing widows being supported and orphans and all the most destitute places, we're watching all these prosperity cults and end times dominionist NAR kind of churches just flourish and capitalize of the most poorest people, and it just breaks my heart. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to just say that because I wish more Americans understood what it is that's being exported to the rest of the world.
That's a huge topic because I just was speaking with someone from Brazil, and he gave me an article that he wrote to share because he said the impact on Brazil and like just the devastation, how it's changed in just like 15 years, how they do church and the number of his friends. He's like, this whole generation of his friends, it's in every major church now in Brazil, and his whole generation of friends threw their lives into it. And now, of course, they've hit like the 10-year burnout where everyone's, it's like that 5-10 year period, and then all of a sudden it's bodies.
Yeah.
And people, and just the people losing their faith, people, disillusioned, not having job options, not having, and then reeling from all the abuse, and then having there's no sanctuary after that because it's everywhere.
And that's been my story, absolutely. I can't find a safe church, no matter where I travel these days, that actually cares for the flock, because all these NAR, IHOP Kansas City, Hillsong networks, they're like, oh, so-and-so goes there. So they're literally blacklist any Christian who actually has a problem with them. Not that you want to go into church anyway because they're singing Hillsong or Bethel or Kansas City music. It's automatically a triggering response for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and good.
Keep going. Nope.
I was going to say, with the group, the ministry organization that I was a part of, Bethany College of Missions. Sorry, hang on. So the organization, one of their major focuses was planting houses of prayer all over the world. And their entire missions strategy was based on Mike Bickle's plan and his entire construction of what worship and prayer is supposed to look like, the 24/7 model, the whole prayer movement, all of it. So I can't tell you how many the prayer exists around the world purely out of that ambition of, we're gonna put them all over the map. And I think a lot of people, especially in IHOP KC, Kansas City area, I don't think they've really, because it's very insulated, right? And so the focus is purely on what's happening in Kansas City, and they haven't seen or understood the global impact, across multiple missions organizations, ministries, schools, and like the devastating fallout that is occurring as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do call that Shire syndrome, because you can go to the church next to you and just say, this is what this church is doing in another part of the world, or this part of the world, and this part of the world. But they've just got no comprehension outside of their Shire. They're like, oh, okay. And they just cannot connect the dots when you actually start talking to lives being affected in places like Canada or the UK. Especially with Hillsong, everyone just thinks, okay, that's just a church somewhere in Sydney. But the majority of Christian churches here in Australia have got no idea how much damage they've caused in other parts of the world.
Well,
C3
yeah,
is another
because
one, by the way. C3's got bigger than Hillsong, and there's lots of Christian City churches over in America as well, and the scandals are just never reported on. So everyone goes, oh, there's one just in my suburb, and that's the mother church. Everyone else is going, oh, yeah, that's just in your local church area. No, it's actually everywhere. There's scandals all the way through, from Asheville to Whitehorse to the UK.
Yeah.
And it's just really sad that people just have this Shire syndrome where they just can't think outside their own community. Sorry for that rant.
no, it's
You're good,
needed
man.
rants. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in good company.
And I feel like it's this like lack of understanding that you know, and I've been deep in like conversation with very, very, very Christians, and so a lot of my language, pardon it, is going to be biblical, but it's that whole yeast thing where it's like a little yeast works through the whole lump of dough thing, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like what the people aren't understanding is how completely like pervasive it's not just sexual abuse. It's not just that's a manifestation of a much more pervasive problem. That is the end point. There's 8,000 things that that are like the prerequisite for that actually manifesting over and over and over and over.
Right.
It's not, it's if you are at the point where you are manipulating women or men, people under you in your care, into trigger warning, the too late now, but sex acts, then you are manipulating people on every level, in every area. You're manipulating for the sake of your ego. You're manipulating for the sake of control. You're for influence. For you're going to do it in finances. You're going to do it in every part of your teaching is going to be inundated with it. And the only thing left to do is to throw out all of it. You cannot take part of it. You can't take part of IHOP. You can't take part of Hillsong. You can't take part of Bethel. Every part of it is steeped in abuse because every one of those leaders is an abuser. They're either an abuser or they're enabling abuse. And at that point, if you are at that level and you are enabling abuse, you are complicit. You are an abuser too. And none of it can be used. But they want the worship songs. No, it's in the worship songs.
Yep.
It's in the songs. Misty was writing the songs. It was in the songs.
I know.
Try as I may to chase another lover.
I know.
It was everywhere. It was endless. How abandoned will you let me be?
Yeah. I know.
Don't be that abandoned. You've lost yourself.
Yeah, make a U-turn while you can.
Yeah, like, no, don't. I will waste my life. Yeah, we were wasting our lives. We were actually wasting them. It was a waste. No love is wasted. No, it was wasted. It was it was a waste.
Wow, that's like the ultimate gaslight, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were singing what we were doing. Horrible. And we loved it.
Brainwashing.
I loved that song.
I know. It's hard to, like, what do you do with that? I don't know. That's still in my nothing mystery box. I don't know what to do with that.
Oh my gosh, Nathan Brooks is bringing it. That song is a spiritualization of dissociation.
One of the worst songs I remember hearing was Jesus, I believe in you and I will go to the ends of the earth, And I was a kid when that song came out. I'm thinking, is anyone actually going to try to attempt that, or is this just empty, hollow words? We're sounding like Peter right now. Lord, I'm not to know you.
Man.
And like, how can this be worship if we're just saying just words that we aren't following through with? It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, but can I just make a comment about that abuse? One thing I've noticed that every single one of these abusive churches have in common, it generally starts with 3 words: God told me.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah.
And I have not seen any instance where that's not been the case. You look at more like the conservative Baptist churches, they'll go, we're just going to read something from the Bible. But when it came to Bickle or even Brian Houston or even Carl Lentz, it's amazing how much these guys hear directly from God and just
Right.
spout off the latest thing. And to me, that is the groundwork where once they realize they can get away with it,
Yeah.
once, they'll try it again and again and again.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how people just don't hold them accountable to those 3 small words. And I think that's probably the best place to start, with an open Bible or just being very critical and just analysing what they just said a few weeks ago. They're quite prepared to contradict themselves. And it's like they rely on you to forget the previous message from last week or 2 weeks ago. Or who cares if the vision from last year completely contradicts the vision that God's given them this year? You get my
Yeah.
drift.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a
For sure.
really interesting clip by, and I'm then bring it around, but by Corey Russell, and he's yelling at everybody. He's yelling about the Roy's report.
I saw this.
Says he wasn't, but he's also screaming "No more victims." So you tell me how
Yeah,
he's
I
not
saw
screaming
that.
about. Yeah, and he's saying you're drunk on reports. You're drunk on the latest podcast.
Yeah.
So, and what I think that the reason that stood out to me was because when that is how I feel about the way people follow prophecies and conferences and the latest word is it's intoxicating for them to feel like they are in the know. I mean, it almost feels like, and I'm really going to step in it here, but it feels like with Q conspiracies waiting for the latest Q drop. And, you know, being in the know and you have secret knowledge, right? And people say it all the time. It's Gnosticism, right?
Totally.
But I think, yeah, Nicole's got it. They were
God's
drunk
delivering
on
his
power.
vision.
Yeah, they're drunk on power, but I think all of us were drunk on proximity to power and the promise of power, promise of access to power, feeling like we knew, but also just like to what Paul was saying, that deep sense of insignificance, but then also like feeling like, I know that I felt like Dave Slyker said shit like this, like, you know, he would say stuff that would imply that if you left or you didn't follow God's calling for your life, you would never feel fulfilled. And so there was like this deep sense of fulfillment I wanted.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to live a life of meaning. I wanted to help people. I deeply cared. I wanted to make the world a better place. Like there was goodness in us. Like I don't think it was all just this quest for significance.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they would hold that out to you.
Like a carrot.
Yeah, yeah. And
But did you find that you had to love the world on their terms, or love the people in the way they told you to love people, rather than just
absolutely.
be
Yeah,
real
you know, yeah, yes, it had
That's
to
what I
be.
had difficulty with.
Yeah. You can't associate certain ways and you can't, and that doesn't work for me.
If Jesus or the gospel is not like centralized in, you know, how we were helping others or loving on others, then it didn't count, right? Like we had to like I'll never forget the day where, you know, we were helping out with this ministry and they gave out like food and clothing and stuff to house people. But in order for them to receive those items first they
Mm.
were required
Yes.
to sit through a sermon
Yes.
Mhm.
to be prayed for.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I was
Yep.
like, what? Like, this does not feel right. Like,
No.
how are we stipulating, this requirement, in order to receive a need,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and so it felt very icky, and it goes across to, other forms of aid, social work, and even like physical and mental health. Like, none of those things count if God is not centralized
Yeah.
um, in those actions. Even all the way down to, like, if somebody has surgery, and we have to say something along the lines of, like, well, God, he guided the hands of the
Of the
surgeon,
doctor. Yeah, for sure.
and that was the only reason why things turned out the way that they did. And
Doesn't it feel like just like a narcissistic need to be the center of attention? Like what
Yeah.
we're doing is just like, but you didn't mention God on your birthday.
Right. It's
Like
it's
you went on a
actually
roller coaster and you
superstitious.
didn't thank him for making it. Like I don't. I went to Six Flags Great America today and rode a roller coaster. I can hardly say that. And I was so grateful that I had the means to do that with my family, and it made me like, and it's just like, why though? Why? He's
yeah,
fine. He's probably pretty secure. He's,
Yeah. Totally.
you know,
I think it's kind of superstitious.
Mm,
Like we've
mhm.
got to put some kind of like God stamp on what we're doing or whatever. Everything's got to be. And one of the things I've been talking to John Collins about is this whole, and I think on ours as well. If you look at the division between quote unquote secular and spiritual, right? That thread goes way on the hell back
Mhm.
to like even pre-Reformation, where way back then the common people couldn't even read. And so the people who were in the know, so to speak, back to the whole, we were talking about power and whatnot. Back then, it was like the spiritual gurus in whatever version of church they were in, mainly Catholic, I guess, that would interpret to people, right? And so you had this growing chasm between what became now in our world secular and spiritual. And I'll be honest, like having been out of church now for 15 or 14 years, like I don't think that way anymore. Like
Mhm.
when I hear people talk like that, it sounds foreign to me. Like
Yeah.
you have a profession, you build a career, and you provide for your family, and you come home and kiss your wife, and hope that you have some quality time with your kid. But like I'm so glad that I feel like that part of my thinking has maybe mostly drifted away or evaporated. But like, I love what you said, Janelle, about that. Like, it's as if it's almost like a superstition thing where you have to put this God
Yeah.
label on it for it to be
God
significant.
approved.
Yeah.
it's always going to be in the right wrapper. That goes back to
God in a rapper.
yeah, you get
God in a rapper.
but like not being able to recognize or take in or appreciate the life that you're experiencing or
Yeah.
witnessing, or the sacred, unless you real quick stamp it with the God stamp so that we know that this is okay. And I
Yeah.
think there's a comment in here about that. Like authoritarian control, only specific thoughts, feelings, and words allowed. And so to make it permissible, you have to enjoy it and to take it in. You have to put the God stamp on it real quick.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's
And
gotta
if you
be.
don't, so it's almost like, okay, sometimes it's helpful to define something by what it's not, right? So what if you don't do that? Like, what if you don't put the stamp on there? Or what if we don't, back to the whole surgery example, Janelle, like, oh, what if we didn't thank God for guiding the doctor's hands? Like, like, can you live with that? Like, is there room in your human existence for a world where, hey, could it actually be that there's a damn good surgeon that just did a surgery and that was that? Like, that was pretty much, I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
Well, and the pain of if things don't, it puts a whole other thing, because then, if you can't afford a good surgeon
there's
and
that too. Yeah,
and then they do a real crap job,
true,
and your sibling dies or whatever,
for sure.
then it's like, oh well, God just loves the rich pastor
The
dude
rich, right? That's
or
a
the
great
connected
point.
dude.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
One of the most raw prayers of my life happened before. I had nowhere to put this. Actually, I won't even tell the full story because it'll trigger people. But I'm just gonna pause it another time. But I will tell the rest of it, which is one of the most raw prayers of my life was when my kids were sick and we had no money and we were screwed. And everyone else in our home group was wealthy, was connected, had wonderful jobs, and Reef was picking up a second job. I couldn't work because the kids were too sick. We had no idea what we were going to do. And afterward, and they're like, just believe, like, what do you want to do? What do you like, God in his favor and whatever. And I went home and I was just like, do I matter though?
Mm.
Because is the goodness that you have only for the wealthy and the well-connected? Is that how the goodness of God comes?
Mhm.
Because I don't have those things and I never will.
Yeah,
And so, the whole verse, like, I would have fainted had I not seen the goodness of God in the land of the living. I was like, I haven't seen the goodness of God in the land of the living because apparently I'm not well connected enough. So are you
Mhm.
exactly what this world is?
Preach it.
Because that's how the world works, is the goodness comes to you that way. So then you get gaslit to hell because they're like, God loves you, you're his favorite, blah, 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 blah. And
right.
then they give examples of his favor, and it's always money or
Of
connections.
course, absolutely. That's how that works. It's the unidirectional grace, Susan, that you and I were
Yes, the
talking about the
unidirectional grace that flows upwards from the
other day. Yes,
bottom, but never
yes.
downwards from the
Never
top.
down, never down.
And
Listen.
it's
And
infuriating.
The only way is
I
up.
want to say this. It's actually a fabrication. It's not real grace at all, is it? Because
Mhm.
true grace does not flow one direction, actually.
Mhm.
As it happens, true grace is omnidirectional, by the
Yeah.
way. And whatever you want to call grace or however you define God or don't or believe in it, I don't really care. The fact of the matter is, like, if it doesn't help everybody, it doesn't help anybody.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think, no, I lost my thought. So
Well, I'll take your spot then. No, I mean that really hits it. Like I think one of the most devastating moments for me when I was at Bethany College Admissions, and this was right after the major earthquake in Haiti.
Okay, yeah.
It's really devastating, and I was like, oh, I want to do something. I just remember like sitting in our little prayer room, like just weeping over it. And so our organization decided they were going to send a team down. They got like special clearance or whatever to do some recovery work. And it was like a certain number of seats, right, on this plane. And somebody messed up, and they had reserved one seat left, like one seat less than what they were supposed to, on this flight down to Haiti, and it could not be corrected. And so they called me and another student in. We were the ones that had the least funds raised compared to everyone else. And they had this conversation with us of like, okay, like this is the deal. Only one of you can go. and like you need to decide like who's gonna go. And so the other person sitting across from me, he's like, well, I know God called me to go. So like I'm not backing down because I know I was called to go. And I'm sitting there like I just felt this huge like crushing like moment of like, yes, I also feel called to go, but also knowing I didn't have the financial supporters that a lot of these other people had. I came from a very poor community, and so it was not an easy feat for me to be able to bring in these thousands of dollars. I had all the skills to raise funds, but in terms of interpersonal skills, but the people and the connections that I had, we were all living in poverty. And so no one was able to come up with resources like that. And it was a really crushing moment for me because in that, like, it defined, well, if you didn't have the funds, you didn't have monetary resources,
Yeah.
you weren't called, you weren't truly blessed, you weren't truly chosen to take on the task before you. And it was a very like crushing, like it really changed my perception of missions, of ministry, of who was worthy. That was often repeated. At IHOP KC, I remember it was often repeated of like many feel called, but few are chosen.
Right.
And that, I mean, it just saying that, I'm just like, how could you say that? How does that, if God is supposed to be loving and, all of these things that, we speak of, how does that align with his heart? Like, how does that align with everything that, God is supposed to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that happened, Janelle. I can see how that would be really crushing.
Yeah. I think that's such a it's such a picture of exactly sad that being chosen has.
So much for the Beatitudes.
Yeah. I think the thing I keep thinking about with this whole like you're God's favorite but we never experienced feeling deeply loved or valued within the church, like, and we watched that happen. We watched people not, I watched, someone brought up Manna for You, which if you're not from IHOP, that was like the expired food from Panera, and they would hand it out, and it was all IHOPers. It wasn't like neighborhood people. And at a certain point, my takeaway started to be, after leaving IHOP, that because everyone would say, I'm even looking at comments. I was looking at comments a minute ago online, because there's some new people have found my Twitter, and every time that happens, when new people read my story and find my Twitter, they encourage me towards forgiveness, which I've forgiven my abuser. I've not forgiven him. And they're like, God loves you. And what I want to say over and over again is they're like, you just need to experience God's love. And I'm like, I've had plenty of time to do that. And the only time that the reason that people aren't experiencing God's love is because you're not fucking embodying it. Love is not disembodied. And if you want to tell me you're the body of Christ, it takes a body to love people. It actually takes a body. And I mean that on multiple levels, because there are problems that are so big in a community, just in any given community, that it takes a whole body of people to love that person well. And
Mm,
if we want to talk about my own abuser, what it took to love him well,
mm,
and in his addiction, was an entire church coming together, and 12 men volunteered, and they sat outside his apartment in 2-hour shifts when he first got out of rehab to keep him from relapsing, and they did
wow.
that for
Oh.
months. And that
Wow.
is embodied love. And what hurts about that is that love was given to my
Mm,
abuser, but it
to your
was
abuser,
not given to me.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I will say this about that community, the community in Canada, or I guess it was a related community, but they did try to demonstrate love to single parent families. What they did was their church actually they had a system where they bought into a housing complex, and 3 families would commit to paying a quarter extra of a mortgage to pay for a 4th home, so that a single parent family um, could live in the same community, and then they committed to be their people,
Mm.
like their family. And they had them over for dinners, and they brought them to school, and they picked them up from school, and so that a single parent could do life
Yeah.
supported,
Mm,
which is beautiful. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that they didn't have that love, but I'm saying that
yeah, it was
the amount of love that's
unidirectional.
the amount of love that's extended often when a community does actually embody love, a lot of times that love goes to the abuser and not to the abused, and the abuse is
Yeah. Well,
you
it's
know
back to it's back to that concept of that unidirectional grace. And
Yeah.
I'll just say this, like Bethel had a little bit of a different flair to what y'all had at IHOP. Bill said this a lot. He said, God loves everybody the same, but he favors everybody differently. But then the next sentence would be, we're all his favorite.
Mhm.
And I always struggled with that
Yeah.
because my logical brain kicks in and it says,
Yeah.
that's actually not possible if you think it through.
yeah.
Mhm.
And in reality, what it really was that God loves everybody the same. And I'm making a statement. I don't care if you believe in God, because I don't know if I do, but God loves everyone the same, and you are favoring people differently.
Right. Well, yeah,
You
that's how
don't
it
love
plays
people the
out.
Yes.
same.
Yeah.
That's how it plays out. Exactly. Um, and but yeah, somebody said in the comments a while back, it's like a caste system.
Yep.
It very much is like a caste. And so the question becomes, like if you're on that hamster wheel, like how do you get from if what we're all after here is to be significant, which I mean, I kind of believe that we all want that as humans, like we want to feel significant, but it's deeper than that, right? Like we want to feel loved, we want to feel seen, cherished, and
I want to be significant to someone.
Oh,
to
I want to be part of something bigger than myself.
Yes, a part of something bigger than yourself. 100%. Yeah.
so it got exploited. That got exploited.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That is what is exploited. So we can't fault ourselves. I think I'm telling myself this, but all of us
This is
simultaneously,
true.
like, I cannot fault myself. Yes, I agree. Okay, what is it in me that wanted to be in a cult or not wanted to be in a cult? I'm not saying I wanted to be in a cult, but what is it in me that sort of hooked me or whatever?
Mhm.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. The significance, but are y'all? Is this making sense? Like,
Yes.
I want to be loved,
Yeah.
and if what Bill is saying is God loves everybody the same, but He favors us differently.
Yeah.
Well, how do I get to more favor?
Mhm.
And so that became the goal. when
Yep.
I mean, I remember being at Bethel. I'm like, the biggest dream I have in life is for Eric Johnson to come to me and offer me a full-time position. And
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and so like and everybody, Janelle, I think you mentioned this a while back. Everybody gets into this competing. It's like this competing. And
Mm.
meanwhile,
Mhm.
those are the bodies that get and end up getting laid behind. Um, so it all goes back though, Susan, to what you're saying, back to your abuser who was getting all of that love going up the channel, so to speak. But you're down here at the bottom of the channel. You're like, what the hell, dude? I'm by myself. Like, I don't have that support.
And I think it's that the church loves a comeback story.
Yes. Yep.
The church is built on the comeback story. I mean, if you think about it, Jesus leaves and it comes
Testimony.
back. The church is oppressed and it rises up. It loves a comeback story. What I don't see, because the story that gets told in the church, and I think it's told all wrong, but the story that gets told about Jesus is here's a king who was mocked, he was crucified, he's buried, he's not accepted, and then he's ascended into heaven, he's rightly crowned, and then he's going to come back for vindication.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And after his humiliation, and they read that story unto themselves, and we read that story onto people, and we hear
Yeah.
testimony after testimony after testimony. They bring these people up.
Right.
And, I was a
Yeah.
gang leader, and now I'm a pastor. I was a this, and now I'm a pastor. And you don't know
Yeah.
what the rest of their life is. I was Russell Brand, and now I'm a Sean Foyt's best friend.
Yeah.
I assaulted 8 women, but now it's fine because God. But God.
But
And I'm
God.
like, whoo! And what you don't hear is just I was unloved and then I was loved.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And that was enough.
Yeah, like as if we needed everything else that goes with that. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry, I'm running my mouth over here.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say one thing that was the biggest thing for me leaving a place like Hillsong and C3 was this self of being a king's kid. We hide behind grace, but it's actually self-entitlement. And one thing we bring into the church from our democratic freedoms, whether it be Australia or the UK or America, is this idea that we must be listened to. We've got the gospel in our hands, but leaving, I started finding visibility when I just was quiet and I just started listening to the pain of people that went through these entire systems. And what I'm really excited about right now with this entire expose is that the church is being forced to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually just
Yeah.
quieting our mouths. We're humbling ourselves. We're going. We started really bad. We don't know what we're preaching anymore. We don't know what we're doing anymore. And I think because of that humiliation, people are just starting to just not say anything and just listen to what's actually going on. And I think that's probably the best place to start from again. It's now listening to victims for the first time. And if you see any of these people that are now kind of just shutting their mouths off, they're not listening. And they're telling people not to listen. Michael Brown's been telling people not to listen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think
Yep.
the church is at that place where we're being forced to listen and actually pick up the lives around them and actually can we just come to an understanding of what's going on here? Because when you're stuck in these systems, at the end of the day, I don't care if the leader loves me. I'd rather the leader understand me so I can actually function well within a community. They don't have to know
Right.
me from a bar of soap, but that wisdom and understanding where you can actually make a significant impact because people in your community understand you. They don't have to love you, they can understand you. I
Yeah.
think listening and understanding and wisdom in that capacity is so much better and more powerful than someone going, I've got the knowledge, here's my book, this is what makes me successful. And all we're
Yeah.
doing is just screaming and just competing, which is something that you guys have been talking about just then as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael Brown has been doing that for a long time.
He
Everybody
doesn't
gets
listen.
quiet.
Yeah.
I think there's something about the fact that there's so much pain that it's that it's impossible, and there's grief in that too, like, right, that there's so much pain that it's impossible to look away from. And I've told this dream like a million times, but when I left IHOP, I had a dream where there were just bodies in the streets in the neighborhood surrounding IHOP, and there were so many that I stopped an EMT, and I was like, people are going to be traumatized just seeing this. Like, passersby are going to be traumatized. Why are the bodies uncovered? And they were like, we're out of bags. And I think that's that she was exhausted. She's just like, we don't have body bags anymore.
Yeah.
And they could not, like, there were no sheets. There was nothing left to cover it. And that's what it feels like now. It feels like there's nothing. It cannot, like, the wound is so great that it can't be covered up. You're talking about a whole generation who was brutalized by the church. I don't know anyone who hasn't been destroyed. I guess my neighbor 2 doors down.
Yeah.
It's fine, but they started their own church, so I don't know about that. This is a great comment.
Yeah.
Empathy empowers. Approval creates dependency, and that's really true because, that system of approval and having to have the right packaging.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's where I didn't fit in because I didn't care about approval. I just did stuff, and that's what just got me in trouble. Heaven forbid, I'm just hanging outside because some kids are just dealing with like drug addictions, and they're just not quite sure what to do. Can they come in? Can they not? So I'm just hanging out with them because I'm thinking that's what Jesus would do.
Right.
But no, that's not good enough. You gotta just help me fit the system, love the way everyone else loves. I'm thinking, but you tell us to be like Jesus, and I just struggled with that dynamic at Hillsong and C3 continually. I did not love the way the church wanted me to do, so I was a liability more than anything else.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It doesn't
That-
make a lot of money to hang out with people that need love and, are hurting and suffering. Like, it's not sexy, and it doesn't generate cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, well, fortunately, but unfortunately for them,
Well, I'm going to have to go. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this live stream.
We do have a really important question.
Sure.
We need to know if you are willing to acknowledge that the All Blacks are the best.
What are the All Blacks?
Oh, I think she's assuming you're from New Zealand and you're from Australia.
I'm from
Is that what's
Australia,
happening here,
right.
Wendy? It's a sports team. I'm assuming.
Yeah. I know what the All Blacks.
Yeah, that could be what's happening. I don't know if I can't tell the differences in the accent, so I don't even know if that's what she's assuming. But I'm gonna get yelled at later.
I just in a lot of trouble now.
I'm probably so much trouble. I don't even know. Yeah, she says no. She knows you're Australian. She knows.
Yeah. No, I'm actually work around the islands of the Pacific, so I'm a huge fan of the Cromwell Papua New Guinean football team. Actually.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
New York sports teams. I don't know what game it is. It could be any sports game. It could be cricket. I don't know if they play over there. Football. It could be. They probably have some like crikey, or I don't know. So sorry.
Well, I should go. I need to toss a
Now
few crabs on the
it's really
barbie.
moving.
So,
Nice to meet you, Jay.
Thank you so much for coming.
Good to see
see you
you.
guys.
Bye.
All right.
I've got a hop too. Y'all are way
it's
more night owls than me.
No, it's time. It's time.
Yeah,
It's been wonderful. I would play us an outro, but I'm not the tech guy, so I can't. But what did Brantley always say? Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.
Somebody's playing some music.
Yeah, there it is. All right. All right. All right. I'll see you guys. You guys stay on for 10 seconds so it can upload your